All right, everybody, it's now 8 p.m. on the East Coast, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to this conference call hosted by the National Peace Corps Association and Returned Peace Corps Volunteers for Environmental Action. My name is Ari Richard, and I'm the Community Engagement Associate with NPCA. I also served in the Peace Corps in Eswatini from 2017 to 2019. We are delighted to have you join us, and I do want everybody to know that we are recording this call. In 2019, NPCA surveyed 3,000 members of the Peace Corps community to determine which issue they thought was most important to address. Climate change came out as the top choice, which accounts for our enhanced work in this area. The purpose of tonight's call, which is the writing letters to the editor that actually get published call, is to inspire you about the difference that you can make, especially as a result of your Peace Corps experience, to seriously address the climate emergency, and to inspire you about the two different teams we've launched, which meet monthly. The first, which is tonight's call, the writing letters to the editor that actually get published team, and the getting elected officials to act team. So we'll go ahead and drop the sign-up form for those two teams in the chat box, but we're gonna go over those at the end of the call a little bit later, after we've heard from our guest speaker. So the agenda for tonight's call is, in just a moment, NPCA President Glenn Blumhorst will introduce our guest speaker, veteran journalist and editorial page editor Rosemary O'Hara. Rosemary will speak for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll take 10 to 15 minutes of questions, depending on how we're doing on time. Then we'll go into breakout rooms. So one will be focused on writing letters to the editor if you've already had experience with writing letters or have been on one of these calls with us. And the other will be for folks who are just starting out and maybe haven't written a letter yet or would like to brush up before they start. After those breakout rooms, we'll come back, hear maybe one or two letters written aloud, and then we'll review that commitment form, the sign-up form that we've dropped in the chat box, and invite you to agree to attend one or both of the monthly action team calls. Again, that's the getting elected officials to act team and or the writing letters to the editor that actually get published team. And that's really the purpose of our call, is we would love to generate excitement about these monthly team meetings and help you find a place where you can get into and stay in action. Now I would like to turn the call over to Glenn Blumhorst, President and CEO of National Peace Corps Association, to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you so much, Ari, and welcome to everyone. It's just a pleasure to see you all here. Thanks for joining us. As you have heard, my name is Glenn Blumhorst, and I served in the Peace Corps in Guatemala from 1988 to 91. Now here as the CEO of National Peace Corps Association for the last few years. And just as a matter of introduction, because I know some of you may not be familiar with NPCA, we are essentially the alumni network of all the individuals who have served in the Peace Corps as volunteers and staff. And we also extend our community to host country nationals, counterparts, family and friends of the Peace Corps, and really anyone who has an affinity for the Peace Corps. But we represent more than 200,000 individuals who've served. And if you can imagine, that's a powerful force for good. If we were all writing letters to the editor and getting them published, certainly there would be a greater awareness in the public eye of what the Peace Corps is and the importance of the Peace Corps at this moment in our country. So really pleased this evening. We're honored to have with us a very special guest, and it's my delight to introduce her to you, Rosemary O'Hara. She retired this year as editorial page editor of the Southern Florida Sun Sentinel. She had served in that position for 9 years. She was also the editorial page editor of the Tampa Tribune, and she had been the managing editor of the Cincinnati Enquirer. And in addition to that, Rosemary was also a reporter at the Miami Herald and at the Orlando Sentinel. And she will provide with us a behind-the-scenes look at how an editorial section is produced and the process for selecting letters for publication. So we're going to get to hear from inside how it is that they look at and select the letters to the editor. Before we begin, let me give an idea of who's on this call and who we're talking to here. A small group of us that are on this call have gathered once a month or so to study together and write letters to the editor and get some practice on this. In the last 8 months or so, our participants have had letters published in the New York Times, and the Washington Post, the Oregonian, the Charleston Gazette in West Virginia, and many other papers. That's who we've got on this call. So we are people who care about the issues, and we will take time to put pen to paper on the issues that we care deeply about. So Rosemary, really pleased to have you with us tonight. I'll hand it over to you. Thank you for joining us, and we're so honored to have such an expert with us here. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm happy to be here, Glenn, and hello, everyone, and thank you for spending some time 8 o'clock on Tuesday night. You know, it shows some dedication, and I appreciate your interest, and I know the cause appreciate your interest too. So I've sort of prepared some remarks, and then, you know, if you have questions, there's time for questions at the end. So let me just begin. I'm going to sort of lay the groundwork for how to approach writing a letter to the editor, and then how to actually write a letter to the editor, and what it is to be like on the receiving end of letters to the editor. So the newspaper business is in a period of great transition. I don't know what the future will look like, but we already know it will look different than a pound of paper plunked in people's driveways every morning. Still, in today's fractured media environment, the opinion page remains a great place to be heard, because people in power are still paying attention to what's being said there. And that's really why people have traditionally written letters to the editor, is because they know that people who matter pay attention to that page, and they still do. Before I talk about how to improve your chances of being published, I want to encourage you to build a relationship with the person at the publication that matters to you. Build a relationship with the person who writes about the issues you care about. Help be their eyes and ears on interesting things they might not know about. Be a source, and be a trustworthy source. You might be quoted, or you might simply inform the angle that the reporter takes with his or her story, but becoming a reporter's source is another way to communicate and to influence the narrative. As Glenn said, I just retired as editorial page editor of the Sun Sentinel in Fort Lauderdale. Before that, I was the editorial page editor of the Tampa Tribune. So I have a lot of experience dealing with people who want to have their opinions published. First, let me step back just a minute and explain why newspapers even have opinion sections, which a lot of readers, frankly, argue we shouldn't. A newspaper is made up of many parts: the day's big news, sports, advice columns, comics, recipes, and the opinion pages in the back of the A section. This is the place where, now that you know the news, you go to see what people are saying about the news. What do people think, and why do they think it? Typically, there are 4 voices on the editorial page. The editorial, which is the newspaper's institutional voice. It's written by a member of the editorial board and reflects the newspaper's traditions and core values. You know, for example, what to expect when you turn to the opinion page of the New York Times or to the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal. Their point of view, their worldview is long established, and if they did a 180, you know, people wouldn't know what to think. The second voice you'll see on opinion pages are oftentimes the cartoonist. Cartoonists, frankly, are a dying breed. Fewer newspapers are publishing them, yet their ability to communicate quickly and visually can drive the debate, the most debate. I often got the most letters about cartoons that we ran. Then third, which is what you all are interested in, are viewpoints or op-eds, which typically run 600 to 700 words. They traditionally appeared on the page opposite the editorial page, hence their name, op-ed. They're generally written by someone with expertise, someone who has a title, somebody whose position commands authority. As a former Peace Corps volunteer, or even as a member of Citizens Climate Lobby, that could be you. And finally, letters to the editor. These are generally shorter than op-eds, at least in most metro dailies. They're about 200, 250 words long. but this could also be you. This is open, these shorter opinion pieces, letters are open to anyone really who has something to say that other people might want to read. And that's really when you're the filter on who gets published, you're looking for interesting people who have something interesting to say that's a little different than what everybody else is saying, or that adds perspective, because the space is limited. And if you're just saying what everybody else is saying without any unique insight, you're probably going to get passed over. As you think about your desire to communicate a message, I would ask 5 things. First, who are you trying to reach? Is it the audience of a local newspaper, a Metro Daily, a national newspaper, a specialty magazine, a scientific journal? Then before you write, make sure you know the publication. Familiarize yourself with what its opinion pages look like. Do they accept op-eds? How long do they run? How long do the letters run? I sometimes would get letters to the editor that had footnotes. Footnotes. Never have I ever published a letter to the editor with footnotes. And if you sent me that, I would know you don't really read us. Second, what do you want to say? This is one of the hardest parts for writers. They know the topic they want to write about, but what do they want to say? What is your angle? Is it different? Is it interesting? And is it specific? Third, why are you the one to say it? A lot of people have opinions about these subjects. Those who get published have some authority on the subject, a demonstrated expertise. And here I'm really talking about op-eds more than letters. But I would encourage you to shoot high. Don't just shoot for letters to the editor. As former Peace Corps volunteers, you've seen the world. You've seen what's happening out there. And that is an authority and expertise that counts for something. So if you're pitching an op-ed, it's like, I was there. I was in Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer, and I saw the impact that extreme heat is having on migration and immigration. It's like, wow, this person saw it with their own eyes. That's a different point of view, and my readers might find that interesting because she's seen something that we haven't. Fourth, is there a time peg or a news hook? Has something just happened that your expertise or that you know something about that other people might find interesting? An event, a paper that came out? Look for openings that lend themselves to your expertise and what you want to say. If something is in the news now and you have an interesting perspective on it, your odds of getting published just went up. If you have something interesting to say, maybe wait for your opening, wait for the window, wait for that time peg, because your odds of getting published just went up. And make sure you keep up with current events and the latest on, what's going on what you want to write about. So you don't get tripped up by not knowing something. And fifth, know when to make your pitch, when to submit your piece to the editor. Timing is important. Do not send your piece at 5 p.m. on a Friday, because guess what? Just like everybody else, newspaper editors are trying to buckle up the weekend editions. We're trying to get out of the office, close the computer. And if somebody sends us an op-ed or a letter at 5 o'clock on Friday, or during the middle of the night, or on the weekend when it's convenient for them, it's going to get buried under a tidal wave of emails. I used to get 500 emails a day when I was at the newspaper. And if you sent me your email on Friday night or Saturday when I was trying to get some well-earned time off, the odds that I'm going to see it are slim. So even though you just finished it and you want somebody to read it right away and you want feedback right away, wait, consider your audience, consider the person on the other end, and send it during normal business hours. And if you're proposing an op-ed, send a headshot photo, a professional headshot photo of yourself. So that's the foundation for pitching, for trying to get somebody's attention, pitching op-eds. Now I just want to quickly say something about how to actually write letters or op-eds themselves. And I'll keep this short and we can get to questions. First, start strong. Make clear what you want to say. Grab my attention by mentioning something in the news, an anniversary, a major new study, something in popular culture. You've got a few sentences to make an impression. Make those sentences count. Strong declarative sentences are best. So is a compelling anecdote. So grab my attention. Second, write like you're talking to your mom or to Mabel, your next door neighbor. How would you tell her what you want to say? You know, avoid acronyms, avoid legalese language. Just talk like I'm talking to you tonight, just one-on-one. You might be writing for 500,000 people, but you're just speaking to that one person who's reading it. So write like you're talking to her. Sometimes, and then it gets back down to what do you want to say? And sometimes writers, and you know this, sit before a blank computer screen and think, God, well, you know, what do I want to say and where do I begin? And all of us have struggled with that. And so what I do when I'm stuck in that spot is I'll also start by writing a sentence that begins, what I'm really trying to say is the recent projection in sea level rise in Florida makes clear communities got to do something about seawall heights. We've been holding back too long and rising tides are here. Oh, that's what I'm really trying to say. What I'm trying to say is fill in the blank. So it'll get you started. If you're, wondering, gosh, how do I start? Answer that, start that sentence. What I'm really trying to say is fill in the blank. Include at least one key fact, hopefully a key fact that gets people's attention. The sea is expected to rise 2 feet in South Florida in the next 40 years. 2 feet in 40 years. Is that a key fact that grabs your attention? And to bolster your credibility when you offer a key fact, which, by the way, key facts are what, separate your opinion from everybody else's. It makes it an informed opinion. But when you write a piece, include links, include a link to that key fact, because as the editor who's dealing with myriad topics, I don't know everything about everything. And to bolster your credibility that you know what you're talking about, include a link or links to the facts that you are offering insight on. Next, help people see why they should care. If something isn't done soon, the report says Florida will lose neighborhoods like Isla Vista and Seaside Estates. Make it personal to your community. Help paint a picture. Help people see why they should care. And make clear what you want to have happen. Write Mayor Pam Smith and tell her that we've got to act now. Not only do we need to save these precious neighborhoods, we need to stop the damage from spreading. That's called the call to action. What do you want people to do with the information you just gave them? Because how often does it happen to you? Boy, you just heard something, and like, wow, I don't like the sounds of that. Boy, somebody really needs to do something about that. But what do you want them to do? You want call to action. And sometimes for groups like yours, it's just raising awareness and letting your elected leaders know that you want them to pay attention to this. So if citizens if you raise awareness and engage with those in power, say, I want something done about this, that, and encourage others to do the same, that might be your call to action. And while it's fine, though, to write letters, to join forces, get other people to write letters to the editor too, make sure you write it in your own words. Don't copy and paste a form letter that has blanks for fill in the blank of your newspaper or your hometown. Editorial page editors have a name for these kinds of letters. We call them AstroTurf, because groups try to blanket our inboxes with these artificial letters from people who didn't write it in their own words. So we alert one another when these kinds of campaigns begin, and all those letters go in the garbage, in the delete file. So if you have something to say it in your own words. Don't plagiarize. Speak from the heart with key facts. Grab my attention. And avoid the I word. I think it would be better if, we had just the words I think are never, hardly ever needed. Instead of I think seawalls need to be raised, seawalls need to be raised. It's a stronger sentence. I encourage you to write Mayor Pam. Write Mayor Pam. Tell her that we need a committee to, whatever your call to action is. In writing too, it helps your credibility to acknowledge the other side of the debate. Sometimes in a letter that's really short, it's tough to do that. But if you do have the opportunity to raise and then deflect the argument, it helps give the words to other people. Well, I've heard this. If you can help me find the words for why that argument doesn't hold water, you've informed, enlightened, and helped spread the argument. And acknowledging the other side adds to your credibility. But you want to be able to dismiss those arguments. And finally, at the end, sum it up. Circle back to your lead. The world is watching. We need to act now. Write the mayor now. Know what it is you're trying to communicate. Say it at the top and say it at the bottom. Circle back to it. Write the mayor. So following my own advice, I'll sum up now as you prepare to write your sample letters and say, start strong, use declarative sentences or an anecdote. Establish your personal authority on the subject. And if you have difficulties starting, fill in the blank of this sentence. What I'm really trying to say is, write as though you're talking to your neighbor, Mabel. Offer at least one key fact and include a link. Avoid the I word. It's dispensable almost every time. And if your first pitch to an editor doesn't work, don't give up. Look for another opening, a news event that makes your opinion more timely. And make sure you make clear what it is you're saying, why it matters. And then write it and then rewrite it. Whatever I write first is never what I would publish. I write and rewrite. I read it out loud and do my best to make it sing, because you want to be heard. You want to be heard not just by Mabel. You want to be heard by your community, by 500,000 people who read the local newspaper or the millions of people who read the New York Times. So make your words count and, don't give up. It takes courage to engage the body politic, and good for you guys for, being part of this and wanting to help make the world a better place. So with that, I'll end my remarks.
I only got the option of thumbs up or applause, so I'm glad you caught that I was trying to communicate somehow. I'm curious about the suggestion that we add the link into a letter to the editor. Is that strictly so the editor can verify information, or are we also providing the reader with the link? Because I don't remember seeing links in letters, especially in our local paper, but
Right. It's mostly for the benefit of the editor. So because part of editing letters is that you're trying to help people squeeze out some words to make them shorter, and because you're trying to get more in, but you also want to make sure you don't publish something that's factually wrong. And if you make a statement that I'm unfamiliar with, I might bypass your letter because I'm not sure you're right. And I know the backlash I'll get if I publish something that's wrong. So I'll do some research, but it's helpful and a courtesy really to include links. Some newspapers include links when they publish letters online. But it's mostly for your credibility and to make the editor's job easier, and making the editor's job easier helps you break through the barrier.
so would that mean that most of the time, if we have provided a link, the editor will remove it before the letter is published?
Yeah, absolutely. In print, we don't run links in print. Sometimes in online though, they'll hyperlink, a couple words and hyperlink those words. So when it says the report that came out Thursday, the report will be in blue and they'll link it to the report that you gave the link to. But generally speaking, letters don't have links.
Thank you.
Yes. I liked that you only got the option of saying applause or a thumbs up.
Right. I wanted to do both, but
Thank you so much, Rosemary, for speaking with our group. It was really a pleasure to hear your suggestions. I'm a former newspaper reporter, and so when I've written letters, I've often attributed facts to the source. Is that something that you would recommend? And I've also included links, but for example, if there's a statistic or something, I'll often say according to the CDC or according to whatever agency or person. And I mean, that's just something that I was trained to do, and I think sometimes it can be beneficial for readers because then they know where you got the information, and it makes it more persuasive. So I'm just wondering what your take is on that. If it's linked already, do you also suggest attributing it to the source? Or
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because people want to know, how do you know that? And so if it's the American Academy of Pediatrics says, children should be vaccinated before that's a stronger sentence than children should be vaccinated before they go to the schools, and then it's your name on the letter. I mean, you don't want to attribute every sentence, the report says at the end of every sentence. What people really want to hear is your voice and your interpretation of what's being said. But absolutely, that's part of like the key fact I mentioned. You want at least one key fact that gets people's attention. And as part of presenting a key fact, you have to say where it comes from, and it has to be a credible source. So you're right on that.
thank you very much.
Yes, thank you too. Thank you for coming tonight. Okay, so I'll let so I guess I should say goodbye now then.
Well, Rosemary, we just want to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you with us. This is really interesting. I learned things myself, and we'll apply them hopefully in the future, and really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and insights with us. Going to turn this back over to Ari and Dylan, and they'll take it from here. Go ahead, Ari.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.